Guys, it's Kelly here and I am back with another video. Today's video is featuring some products from Gina K Designs. She's kind of delved into some cutesy stuff lately and I think it's adorable. So this is the special delivery pandas, and then I've chose the gingham, the lattice, and the sassy stripes stencil, and we're going to be talking about patterns and texture. But before we get to that, I want to show you, and I put it right up at the front of the video because today's the last day for the coupon code. This is the, oh, hold on, I'm going to forget how to say it. The Mag ink tray from Glassboard Studios and the Craft Catcher. So these are magnetic. They stick to your glassboard mat. That's what I have on my bottom, and they fit like your standard size ink pads. They maybe are coming out with different sizes, and then the Craft Catcher actually has 3 sizes. This sits, you can see mine already has stuff in it. It's because I used it while I was making this card. Super handy, and it slides underneath your glass mat, and then you can just scoop your trash, which is what I used it for, or your gems or whatever. The reason that I'm putting it in there is because the coupon code, since they are new products, is only for today and tomorrow, and it is Kelly1515. And that will actually get you 20% off, but not even just the new things. It'll get you 20% off the whole website. So if you were on the board about getting a glass mat, this might be the time for you to grab it. So anywho, I just wanted to share that. Now let's talk about the things that we're doing. So I picked out 3 of my Gina K cardstocks. They all match except for this one. So I don't have the sea glass ink, but I do have the ocean mist. And so they're close enough for government work, and I'm just using that. And then the other one is grass green and passionate pink. And so sometimes we can get a little bit overwhelmed with patterns and textures because things can get really busy. So here are some ideas for how to like successfully use them and get more out of the products that you have without overwhelming your design. So I did add a little bit of ink blending around the edges, and that is going to help me create contrast, which will help the techniques that I'm going to do with my patterns stand out a little bit more. So these are just regular embossing folders. Gina has started carrying some 3D embossing folders, but I think those always match her sets. But anyway, when it comes to embossing folders or stencils, I am a big proponent of very simple patterns because this is going to give you the most versatile way to use them. Also, be advised, you want the part that is raised, the embossed area, to be the part where you did your inking, because I did it correctly with the sea glass, but I did not do it correctly with the grass green, and I ended up having to do it again. So then once I ran them through the embossing folders, I'm going to add another layer of ink around the outside edge. My particular card design is going to put my my focal points in the center, so I'm not worried about getting the center. I just want to add that contrast to the edges. Now, that is for the embossing folders. Don't worry, we're going to come back to them. For using your stencils, so here I am going to use a tone-on-tone stripe. So I'm using a grip mat, which I really like to hold my stencils, but I do find that on some of these where they're a little bit longer and there isn't anything in the middle for it to kind of like hold on to, they're, you know what I mean? They're a little, there's nothing tethering them, so they're a little wobbly. I do feel more comfortable holding them with my hand. So here we have a tone-on-tone stripe. No, it is not even. No, I am not worried about it. Whatever the ink blending situation is, people, it's none of our business because you're not even going to notice it by the time it's over. So now to make this more than what it is, I'm going to line up the stencil with exactly how it was before, and then I'm going to just shift it slightly to the top right, and then that is going to give me this little bit of overlap. So now not only do I have the color of the cardstock, and then I have the stripe that's tone on tone with the color of the ink. Now I'm going to create a third one, which will be the largest stripe, that is going to be a light pink because I am using a white pigment ink right over top of the paper, and it's not going to be opaque. There is going to be some translucency to it. So that is what's going to create that light pink. So then we have still that tone on tone, but we're creating lots of pattern and interest in the background. But because it's a simple pattern, we aren't competing with the focal point. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to do all of this with my the pigment ink. And then before I move to stencil, I'm actually going to add in one more thing, which if you don't love a tone on tone, and I totally get that, you can add details with neutrals. So here I'm using a white gel pen and I am just butting that right up against well, I guess it's the top of each layer, so that I'm getting a line at the bottom of each stripe. It doesn't matter which direction you choose to do it, just keep it consistent. So there, now we have this pattern here that we've created from just this one stencil. You could also flip this to get a plaid. There's lots of things you could do. For the embossing folders, we're going to use our brayer. So again, you could switch up the color of the ink that you want to do. I am using white because I have these pandas, so they're already white and black. And then I have these other kind of supporting colors. So I wanted to keep the patterns where they're nice, they're neutral, they're tone on tone, they're not competing with my pandas. My pandas are still absolutely the star of my show. But they are still have lots of interest in the background. And then because I am just a person who likes them to be like very matchy for my photos, you could actually give these cute little pandas, like these little 3 cards, as just like a little gift set. So that way, somebody could send out a little gift set, for little Christmas cards. So now let's get to the pandas, shall we? We're going to stamp these. I stamped all of the images from the set, which is one of the mailboxes, the little panda in her little dress, adorable. One panda that is wrapping gifts, and one panda that's popping up out of the box. And these are a finer line drawing, which is really nice for like if you maybe want to dip your toe more towards like no line coloring. These kind of finer line ones are really nice to be able to practice that. But I like a bold black outline, so that is what I'm using. Now, you guys know that I do like to leave my boo-boos in. And so here I am coloring, this is the first panda that I've colored. I've never colored these before. And when you're coloring white, you only want to put down the shadows. So we're only adding in the shadows. That is why it looks so gray. Don't mind my dogs barking. People who live here are coming home. So that means we have to bark at them because we don't know who they are because they live here. Moving on. So here, I've gotten way too dark. Like I just was way too heavy-handed with my grays. And so now my little panda girly has a super gray face. So I left it in to show you guys that it is fixable. So once I realized that it was way too dark, and here I'm going to show you how to do it the way so that it actually looks white. I went back in with my colorless blender and I tried to lighten up the areas that I wanted to be white. And then I left it alone because you have to, when you're trying to use your colorless blender, you have to let it dry, because if you try to go in while it's still wet, you're just going to like bleed the pigment out. So now I've colored the under 2 pandas. And now I'm going to go back in for a second application to move that pigment around to get it to be a little bit more white. Now, yes, I know the other ones still look gray, but that is because we don't have any other colors around it. I promise you, as we continue coloring, they will look white. So our panda faces are white, but our panda ears and panda paws are black. With the eyes, we do want to make sure that we can still see those eye lines, like where their sweet little faces are all smiley. So we have to be careful about how we're adding our black. Just like with white, when we're adding white, we do want to make sure we're leaving white areas. When we are coloring black areas, we want to put black in them. So I am putting the black kind of like where the ear is kind of tucked behind the head, on the top and the bottom. And then for the eyes, I'm putting the black on the furthest outside edge. So we still have that black that will read black, but from here we are going to work towards some gray midtones. Now, for the little paws, the lines are drawn so that the paws are kind of sectioned, the fingers and the toes. And so we're going to add the black in between, like where the fingers and the toes are meeting, but we're going to leave the majority of it open, because remember, our shadows and our highlights should be the minimal amount, and the midtones is what you're going to see the most of. So now that we've put our shadows in with our black, we are going to go in then with a C9. These look like they are identical, like they are the same color. And I know that, but I promise you, when you are working through it, once you get to that lightest color, which in this case is going to be a C5, you will see that even though it is gray to black, it does read as black, and you can see how these colors helped you get from one end of the spectrum to the other. So I forgot to do the eyes. That's why I have to go back in there with the C with the C9, because I forgot to do them. So now we're out to the C7, and then see, we're leaving those like those little circles where the actual eye is drawn, and we are going to fill that in with the lightest gray, which is in this case is going to be that C5 that we talked about, and then that will also be the highlight to keep the separation on the toes. I did leave the center of the ears open, so that way I could add just a little bit of pink to their ears, just to give them a little bit of extra color. And then towards the end, I did go in with those same pinks, that RV00, and add just a little pink underneath their eyes to give them like a little bit of a pink cheek. But it is very, very subtle. So now I did the RV02 in the darkest part of the ear, the inside of the ear, and then I blended that out with the RV00. Since these pandas are basically the same thing, I showed you the full one of the whole body, and the rest of them I just colored exactly the same. The only one that is any different is this one who's wrapping their gifts. Adorable. And then you can see his little toesies. So I did do that with the C1 and the C3. And then now you will notice that I am going to speed this up, because we are coloring 3 images for the cards, versus like usually we're coloring 1 image. The coloring does take a long time, and I wanted you to be able to see all 3 of the cards kind of as much as possible, so I did have to speed up the coloring. If you were like, hey, this is way too fast for me, I totally get it. If you're watching on YouTube, you can go into the little gear, like it's a little wheel gear, and click on that, and it will allow you to change the speed. So you can slow it down, and I will sound like the Peanuts teacher. Just mute me, and you can watch it at your own speed. So for the dress, I wanted to create the little flare of the dress, and so I added little triangles of darkness where the dress dipped down, where it had a valley, and the same thing with the bow. So where the bow is gathered, I added some, and then where it dips on the outside edge, I added another little triangle of darkness, and then blended that out to my lightest color. I used these same pinks for the flag on my mailbox, the berries, and all of the holly, and the little hearts on her. Aren't those like so cute? And this one is not even like, I guess with the holly, it kind of reads as Christmas, but you could definitely cover that up with like another little flower from another set, and then you could use it anytime. Like that's just at any time. And even the sentiment, special delivery from a loving heart, like anytime, which I love. Same thing with like the one where he is wrapping the gifts and has like the little cocoa and the cookies. Winter birthdays, absolutely. You could absolutely use that. Wrapped with joy and filled with love is totally an anytime sentiment, and I am here for it. So here with the mailbox, I like this color combination, this teal. It is a bit brighter, but sometimes when I'm coloring like a large area, I can have a little bit of trouble getting the BG45 and the BG49 to blend. And so here I used what they call the tip to tip technique. And so you take the lightest color, you kind of rub it over the nib of the darker color, and it gives you a good mid-tone as you lay the color down, and this can help with the blending. So when you're back to the, we talked about the video, like we want successful cards with successful focal points that have textures and patterns. So in order to keep things from looking so busy, we kept the patterns that were more tone on tone, or we enhanced with some neutrals. But then also your color palette. So when you're here, I have black and white, which is neutrals, and then I also have a brown, which is for the mailbox and the cookies. I think I also used the lightest one for the marshmallows, honestly. Like I just did like a little dot. But then the rest of the colors, I am repeating. So we have the pink from the pink background, the passionate pink, the yellow green from the grass green, the teal from the sea glass. And then if I need a variation of that, because there's a lot to color here, right? We don't always want to be coloring with the same color. Then you can do what I'm doing here, which is I am kind of sliding along the color scale. And so instead of using an RV 04, 06, 09, and a 69, which is a dark combination, I am using an RV 00, 02, 04, and a 06. So it's a much lighter pink, but still in the same family. So it's still working without bringing in anything that's going to compete or confuse or create that busyness. Same thing with the greens. You can, I'm right in the middle there with that YG 03, 17, and 67. You could absolutely go darker into like the G 1929 and make that still in the same family, still in that yellow green family. But it just by changing your shadow colors, you can make it a little bit darker. Or go the other way and do a YG01, which is almost like fluorescent. It's so light. And drop the 67. And then you have a much lighter green combination. So those color combinations can help you kind of get through more element heavy, because even like this, okay, so, the one that's in the box, there's the bow, there's the holly, there's 2 candy canes, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 ornaments, 2 lollipops. So there's like a lot to color, but we don't want to create that competition. We don't want to create that, that issue with, things being kind of muddied up, So I was able to keep it pretty simple with the same color combinations that I chose from the very beginning, all the way through to the end. So, story time. I have had 2 lives this week, which is crazy considering that my daycare was closed. So we have a wonderful daycare and I adore her, but she has 5 of her own kids, and her daughters, she has 4 daughters and 1 son, and her daughters are, they're around the age where they're having their kiddos. So I think this is her 10th grandbaby. And we've been around for the birth, I think, of like 5 or 6 of them. But it was usually she takes a week off for her wedding anniversary, which is awesome. They went to Hawaii. Fantastic. Here I'm using the coordinating dies to cut that out. And then I also wanted to create like these simpler kind of shapes. That's one of the things that Gina really does super well. And so I am using these stitch dies. This is the double stitched rectangles and double stitched circles. And so I'm using these in a couple of different ways. And again, I always like joke around about how like matting it in black is the Gina K style, but it works. You know what I mean? The reason that she does it is because it is striking. We are creating that contrast. And for us in the pandas, we already have that black and white contrast, so there is no reason not to continue it on. Now, I did want to use the largest circle because that is what fit my image the best, but I wanted there to be a little bit of a black border. So I traced the die onto some black cardstock, and then I'm trimming that out. I will be very frank with you. This circle is not perfect, but it doesn't really matter. Get the most perfect-ish edge toward the top, wherever, like, where it's noticeable, and then the bottom is going to be where your sentiment sits anyway, so it doesn't matter. This one is the largest rectangle for this particular set, the double stitched, and I wanted it to be a little bit larger, so I just glued it to a piece of black and trimmed it. So anywho, they were on their anniversary. Well, then her daughter, who is pregnant and is due, her husband is on deployment and she has a 2-year-old. So her sister, who normally would like step in for my lady who does the daycare, had to be out there to help with her 2-year-old, because otherwise this poor girl is just going to be by herself having a baby with a 2-year-old. So anywho, so it ended up like the week we were supposed to like she was supposed to be there. Oh, here's that little tray. See over there? And then the other thing that I used it for was the embossing, because I normally like have leftover, even though I use a piece of paper, I normally have like a little leftover embossing powder on my desk. I just used like a large paintbrush and like swooped it off to the edge, and the little thing caught it, and then I could just scoop it up and throw it away. Very handy. Anyway, so she was going to be home to watch the kids, so that it wasn't like 3 weeks with no daycare. But then she ended up having to fly out there to help her sister. And then the poor girl was scheduled for her to be induced on Tuesday, and her sister was flying out on Saturday. Her mom was supposed to be there on Monday, like, so it was all going to be good. She delivered that baby on Friday, you guys. Oh my gosh, like I cannot even imagine. But now all of her help is there and is helping her, but that also meant that we were like riding solo for daycare the last little bit. And thankfully my wonderful in-laws stepped up and watched my daughter, my little one, at the, here's me sweeping, stepped up and watched her at the end of the week so that we could both go back to work. But my husband and I split the difference. Like he took off some days, I took off some days. And so anywho, now today is the last day of the needed daycare. So they're coming over to eat pizza and hang out and see the kids, which will be nice because I haven't been able to see them. So I added a little shadow underneath them. Of course, I added some shimmers because I love all the shimmers. And then I did add some white gel pen details. I added a little polka dot to the scarf. This is kind of like hit or miss. I thought about adding a little polka dot to like her dress or her hair bow, and I was like, no, I don't want to get too crazy with the patterns. So you don't want too many patterns. You have to kind of pick and choose where you want the patterns to be. But I did add like the highlights to like the berries, to the bows, to the little lollipops and the candy canes. I think these are really, really cute. She has some other ones. She has some elephants, and I'm trying to remember what the other ones were. Anyway, I'll link over to that section because they're really, really cute. I like this. We talked about this. Like I thought stamps were going to have like a little comeback with all of the things going on in the industry. And I do think that they are. I think that the coloring images are going to have a comeback, and I'm here for it. So here are all 3 of the cards with all 3 of their patterns and textures. I hope that you guys learned something. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. Don't forget, if you're interested in anything from Glassboard Studios, there's 20% off. The coupons listed below. Thank you again for spending your evening with me, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.